How to Rat Ninja, Eshin Triads for triple the fun. Since this has its own Regiment of Renown, I'm revising the original plan and doing Triads here, Death Runners another video. This was quite a mind-bender for me, but I knew it would be. By the end of this video, you should understand the roles, uses, and potential of the unit, making you a deadlier leader of ninjas. Let's scurry to it. Recruit for 750 gold and 188 upkeep, and for Eshin it's a tier 3 building, not tier 4, for 1 turn local recruitment. The Eshin Triads on Ultra Scale arrive with 72 models and 5,760 health for 80 per. Armor of 20 is 10 better than Night Runners, it's still pretty bad. Physical resistance is 30% from being higher grades of Ninja Rat. Leadership 64 may not look impressive in other rosters, but 16 better than Night Runners isn't bad. Speed is identical, as in speed 54 and charge speed 60. Melee attack begins at 30 or 6 better, which is an incremental improvement on paper, but we'll get back to that. Each blow inflicts Weeping Blade a full 35 seconds of minus 50% armor to the target. Now, you're probably wondering, okay Battle, in regular Skaven rosters this was really good at increasing Knight and Gutter Runner damage, but they're armor piercing now, so what's the point? That applies only for their missiles. Their melee is still heavily base tilted. So number one use of this in Eshin is to soften something up for base damage in melee, from the Assassin Hero onward. Attack intro Volt 4.6 seconds is slower, but not Empire Spearman slow by any stretch. Despite the lowered number of entities, no splash damage. Melee defense begins at 28. Despite being double that of Night Runners, it doesn't feel good enough, but we'll get to that. Weapon strength 30 is split base 8 and armor piercing 22, so nearly 3-to-1 ratio in favor of armor slicing. That is definitely good. There is a bonus versus large of 15, therefore both melee attack and weapon strength of a rank 0 unit are increased by 50% to melee attack and weapon strength 45 versus Jade Lancers. Charge bonus is actually reduced to 10 compared to base Knight and Gutter Runners, and mass is 19. In addition to Stalk and Vanguard deployment, this unit has Strider, so no movement penalties ever, and no problem fighting in shallow water, being that level of ninja. Also, charge defense versus large and charge reflection, but it can be a challenge getting units to slam into them in a way that will actually trigger this. Having said that, just being in melee distance with Jade Lancers lets them go to town, and the Lancers wandering into them get no charge bonus anyway, so it works out. Also, Eshin Triads get Concealment Bombs, no different from any other unit with it, 3 uses and a long duration of stock and unspottable for itself. This means it'll be spotted at shorter ranges. Also, strength in numbers and scurry away, the usual stuff, but still valuable in the proper context. Iksha's Triads, the Regiment of Renown, comes for 900 gold to recruit and 225 upkeep. Leadership 74 is 10 better in its rank 9 state, melee attack 38 is 8 better with Weeping Blades retained, melee defense 36 is 8 better, and remember, strength in numbers will boost this mid-battle. It retains Concealment Bombs. Therefore, the real change, aside from rank, is Doppelgang. 50-meter range, it creates a body double unit of the Triads and makes the original unspottable for the duration. That simply means the improved stealth meant to be obtained from Concealment Bombs, so you essentially get 5 cracks at the apple for unspottable. The illusion does no damage to foes, but the weapons team's fire launched with even less of a conscience than usual in its vicinity will inflict tons. In the Redline skills, 3 pips of Respected and Feared. The Redline skill gives them melee attack plus 6 and weapon strength plus 9%. Since they're pure melee units, this is fantastic for them and strongly recommended for making them far more efficient at fighting all types of opponents. At rank 7 and above, Gutter Wise grants leadership plus 5 and speed plus 20%. The speed increase is enormous, but this is partly because Infiltrator doesn't apply to them, so there's no benefit like the Knight and Gutter Runners get. In the tech tree, Devious Plans reduces recruitment cost by 5%. Sorry for misstating this as upkeep in a recent vid. Upkeep is for Skaven slaves only. Hit and Run raises infantry speed plus 10% faction-wide. In the current state of the game, that's basically it, and the in-game tooltips show that Death Runner technologies do not apply to Eshin Triads. They are lower price than Death Runners, so that's the offset. For Clan Eshin campaigns, quality and quantity. is exclusive to them, and this will add plus 20% to the upkeep, which is a nerf and is big. But if the Triad is over rank 7, it will get melee attack and melee defense plus 6. Snitch's legendary items help, but see his video for more details when it's out. Like some Chaos units out there, the real help here is in the red line. So how do we use Eshin Triads? This is what I've revised several times. Let's start with a comparison to a unit from a while back, Doomseekers, the small entity Count Slayer's unit with minor splash damage. A single unit will tend to drown against an ordinary size infantry rectangle, especially one with a generally high damage output like Savage Orcs. While you can combo it with chaff units and have them dilute incoming damage, the alternative I discovered all on my own from trying long enough was combining it with another Doomseekers unit. They filled their own unit gaps, and the splash coverage, even though it's 2 max I believe, made for an armor-piercing blender that could storm its way through multiple ordinary infantry units. Similarly, the Eshin Triad can combine with itself, which is yet another reason your intro to one as Snitch is very cruel. Because let's not be subtle, physical resistance and tight but thin lines do not mix well with poison wind mortar strikes, friendly fire that will absolutely wreck you if allowed. More to the point, multiple Savage Orc units, especially big uns, will simply overwhelm the armor, and the physical resistance can only muffle things so much, let alone if the war boss gets in melee with them. So watch out for characters fighting them. In that case, your Triads will often take disproportionate damage and flee, which is a self-correcting mechanism. They flee very well, but still, you don't have much of a front line for turn 1. So if you're going to do what I'll call a Triad trap, leading cavalry to them, especially when popping a concealment bomb, don't combine it with poison wind mortars or equivalent. Do combine it with gutter runners and so on, because Eshin armor-piercing missile strays will be muffled by 30% for the Triads. Combine with hero action, like with assassins, and you can totally pull this stuff off. But keeping mortars away from your line units is good practice regardless. Using heroes to tank can absolutely work, and can be your best option, even if it bruises your legendary lord. So to address this, Triads are more effective the fewer the number of entities on the other side. Death Runners are their own case, but here, for emphasis, hitting zombies and Skaven Slayers is their weakest case. Dark Riders up to Horned Ones, they cannot just fight. They're fast enough to talk about in the same breath as Khorne Gores, though remember, these here are armor-piercing full-time, and you still have Weeping Blade, if you can find something to use it with, including your skirmishers in melee, and chasing a non-strider heavy cavalry unit into a forest means you can catch it, and definitely will stop it from cycle charging. Conversely, cavalry might avoid Triads if they're stationary Triads, but the Triads can hunt as an anti-large hammer. It's just in addition to that, they can just brace and repel charges too. It depends on your situation. Now, how about monstrous infantry and lower entity counts? Triads not only are great at this, they're probably far and away your best specialists at it, because all of a sudden we get a benefit from the size of the entities themselves. Triads may have long weapons, but the rats themselves are not of unusual size. They swarm, they slash, they rend. Having multiple entities gang up on a single ogre or crypt horror entity is exactly where they're at their strongest, reversing what regular infantry units can do to them back at the enemy. An example of a unit they would prefer not to fight, Hobgoblin Cutthroats. 140 entities, very decent in melee. Yeah, this tendency accelerates if they're able to stop chariots cold and rip them apart in melee, and then things like single entity monsters and mounted characters, where the AP makes the damage more consistent, but the bonus versus large makes the attacks landing more consistent. More to the point, Stormvermin with Halberds are phenomenal holding units, and priced for it, but they aren't as committed to wrapping around an enemy troll or dragon. They're staying in disciplined ranks when possible, especially if you have guard mode on or I think a certain quick skill. For a cheaper, more mobile, stealthier option, Triads dominate a lot of monstrous infantry matchups, though ones with magical attacks like Spawn of Tzeentch will still take their toll. With Champions of Slaanesh, I showed how their frontage works against dragons. Triads do pretty well wrapping around a dragon even with one unit, but of course, doing 2 units, like I did with Champions, really chops those dragons down. Triads are not the perfect pursuit unit, but against quite a lot of infantry in the game, they'll mercilessly pursue and cut down anything fleeing. For stuff more in the troll speed range, you really need some way to slow the stuff down. But those ways exist, especially with Eshin sorcerers. In stealth situations, your ideal, above all else, is to pincer the enemy. If the initiator, playing the pinning force, i.e. Anvil, charging a missile unit is likely to send it fleeing. If your gutter runners are behind the unit, you are herding that unit toward shurikens or a double team in melee where, if armor is present, Weeping Blades makes the gutter runners far more effective in melee. The combination is far better than the triads alone. As a pure front line, ideally you don't even need them, but if you do, triads may be thin, but unless the enemy uses specific means, and Clanrats and let alone Skaven slaves are vulnerable to stuff too. There's no perfect solution. You can hold for quite a while. If Poison Wind mortars are really bad for them, and trust me they are, then magic that you can aim accurately completely flips the script. Magic really helps. What the Regiment of Renown does is solve the one massive vulnerability I just mentioned, giving it an illusory Vermintide-style summons. No, it doesn't do damage on its own, but if nothing else, you can ram the illusion into the face of the enemy advance and bring mortars down to your heart's content. Snitch raises speed further, adds flat charge bonus, adds leadership and melee attack during ambushes, and he ambushes a lot, and basically you really want to exploit the advantages, but the conclusion goes like this. Despite being a bracing unit, this is a highly mobile anti-large hammer. It's not as fast as monstrous cavalry in that role, like dragon ogres, but if you need to turn a blood-rack Medusa into your next pair of shoes, they're your boys. Chase, catch, destroy. Luring things into their traps is just a nice thing when you can pull it off. So if you have only one of them, using it like a roving linebacker to bonk monsters over the head can work. You just need something else to absorb charges like Skaven slaves. Nobody cares about them. If you have 4 to 6, that's a front line. Thin as it is, but it's less investment than in 2-turn recruit Stormvermin with Halberds. If that's all you need, great. And they do bring advantages. A minor thing, but being smaller head count wise makes it a little less aggravating getting one through a city gate flipped through subterfuge. Gutter runners tend to clog up and try to climb the walls. Blech. So next time a giant tries messing up your neighborhood, send a couple of triad units to sort it out. You're probably also sending a hero or 3, but that just keeps the triads healthier and inflicting damage longer. While not as efficient fighting large entity cavalry units, they conversely become more efficient the more elite and smaller the number of entities on the other side. Within limits, they're still Skaven. It's just easier to win fights that are 3-to-1 entity-wise, but Demigryph Knights, Rod Knights, at least this is one of your better options. Being largely unloved by the tech tree still feels like a publisher oversight, but the price is more generous in this case. Last video, didn't I even say Skaven slaves, especially the spears thereof, were better than nothing for night runners, etc., for a frontline to work around? Clearly, you can use triads in that role. They're better than Skaven slaves for most purposes. Taking stray mortar shots may be an exception. Take care, and have fun finding even more combinations to ruin the enemy's day. I find them to be real sponges for magical support, making them all the better, and they're still a lot faster than Stormvermin for pursuing the routed.